Another week is ending, and as usual, we come your way again with an exciting package which includes educative interviews and stories that made headlines in the world of business this week. My name is Desmond Frimpong, and you are welcome to another edition of BizTech right here on Ghana Web TV. COVID-19 has taken a large toll on economic activity in sub-Saharan Africa, putting a decade of hard-won economic progress at risk. The pandemic is pushing the region into its first recession in 25 years. That's according to the 2020 Africa Pulse report by the World Bank. The report, amongst other things, has warned Ghana about its widening fiscal deficit and recommends that government look to policy reform as a driver of economic recovery. The World Bank also says until Ghana broadens its tax net to capture every income-generating activity to close the vast fiscal gap, the country risks plunging into debt distress. George Nabo of the Ghana Web Business Desk engages Dr. Lord Mensah, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School, for more insights.
This week, the World Bank released its Africa Pulse report, a biannual analysis of the macroeconomic situation for African countries. The report warned Ghana about its widening fiscal deficit, which is to say that government was spending way more than it was earning. The report says unless government widens its tax net, the country risks plunging into debt distress. We are here today to speak to Dr. Lord Mensah, a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, to better understand this caution by the World Bank and its implication to you and I. Dr. Mensah, thank you for joining us on BizTech. Kindly break down the caution by the World Bank to us.
If you look at Ghana as a country, clearly you could see the reason, nature of our debt, the trajectory. I would say, yes, the speed at which it's going up is somehow, alarming. And if you look at our infrastructural development, because normally when you accrue debt, you expect that the debt will grow alongside your infrastructure, because what you generate from the infrastructure is what you use to pay for your debt. So then more or less you're looking at accruing debt that it will be self-financing. But then if it turns up that you are increasing your debt, but then we don't see clearly the infrastructural improvement, then it becomes a concern. And so the caution by the Bretton Woods institution, I would say, is in line. And you don't need a magic wand to know that, yes, our debt is going up, and even the intention of increasing our debt, because if you look at the budget review that the finance minister just did, clearly you will see that the intention to create a huge, gap, which is, what we want to spend, i.e. to what we generate, is quite of a concern, to the extent of even, requesting for a review of the Fiscal Responsibility Act that Parliament just passed. And for me, if you are sitting anywhere, as a citizen or maybe an institution that has a huge stake in the economy, you obviously be of a concern. And so, if you ask me, it's in line. And if you look at the intention, like I said earlier, we're thinking about 11% of our GDP as a budget deficit, by the end of the year. Even some are even proposing 12%. So it will be of a concern, because already the threshold that, has been given, looking at our revenue generation, looking at 70% of our GDP, we almost at the threshold. And so we need to be cautious, because we can't afford to have a country where we generate revenue, but about 70% of our revenue generation will be going into, debt payment. Then it's going to freeze your infrastructure development. And remember, population is growing. And as population is growing, we need infrastructure. I mean, I would not say we don't need infrastructure, but then we have to be careful. I mean, how we spend.
So what is the worst case scenario? What happens if we get to the 70% threshold that you speak about?
Well, I mean, as a country, you need to understand that you have some responsibilities which are essential and some are obligatory. And we have statutory responsibilities as well. So, for instance, salary payment and all those. Now, we can get to a point where if we don't take care, we'll end up using chunk of our revenue generation to pay interest. And when it happens like that, debt interest. And when it happens like that, then it means we have to sacrifice. And that is where, the government will find a way to make sure that they squeeze the citizens. And in the worst case, we're going to see a situation where taxes will be introduced unnecessarily. And if you introduce taxes unnecessarily, it has a tendency of affecting, profit after tax of businesses. So you will not encourage businesses. And remember, we live in an economy where the private sector dominates. So if it turns up that whatever investment you do or whatever business you do is going to be taxed to a certain level, then you weigh, and also even FDIs, they're going to weigh, coming into the environment where they're going to squeeze them with taxes. I mean, if there's a tax haven somewhere, they will migrate. So the country might not necessarily attract the necessary investment that is required. And so it's of a concern. I mean, it's a serious concern, and especially when our debt is growing, but then the infrastructural development are not growing cash flows that can easily pay for this debt, then it becomes a problem.
So these analysis that you are making, these implications that you are giving are all on the macro level. If you bring it down to the micro level, to the ordinary Ghanaian on the street, you and I, what is the implication of this widening fiscal gap deficit?
Well, in the end, like I mentioned earlier, it will turn up that we have to find a way to pay for this debt. And remember, if you weigh the balance of the debt between, foreign and then the local, you will get to understand that now the foreign debt outweighs the local debt. Now, they had a reason for doing that because they don't want to borrow from the local market that much to squeeze, the small funds that are available so that the private man can easily have it. But even that one is not making an impact. That decision is not making an impact because we have a liquidity problem in the environment for which, at the end of the day, the private man cannot easily walk to the bank. But then as an ordinary person, if it turns up that we are choked with debt for which every now and then we have to find a means of paying. I mean, if you are paying your debt and you don't have any cash flows from your investment that you've done, what you do is you tax your people to pay the money. And taxing the people means that you're going to increase what? Taxes. And if taxes are increasing and businesses are not coming to expand, businesses are not expanding, I mean, what will happen? People can go out of job. And already COVID has had a toll on the environment. And that is why we're saying that with a double, dose, right, looking at what COVID has brought in and looking at the situation of the Ghanaian economy before COVID, we should have been a bit conserved in terms of our spending when the COVID came in. Because I was expecting that in the end, we're going to have COVID related. Because if you are sick in your house, right, let's take it to our homes. If your child is sick, that is not when you start thinking about building. That is not when you start thinking about buying a car. But that is when you want to get, your child healthy before, But we did not look at that. We want to make sure that our child is healthy, and at the same time, we want to ensure that we still deliver our houses. We still have the cars that we can drive on, and all those. And that is what the nature of the leadership that we have now, the management of the economy. They want to still handle the because COVID comes with its own expenditure, because there are emergencies, which you least expected, them into the folds of your expenditure. So effectively, I would say that we should have been a bit conserved. But then going forward, that is the decision that has been made. I mean, by the management of the economy. Effectively, I believe that yes, they have a reason why they took that decision for still being aggressive.
Well, my final question on this trail is a suggestion by the World Bank that unless government must widen its tax net to capture a lot of the business activities. What other suggestions do you have for government in bridging this fiscal deficit gap?
Well, for me, the suggestion I have might not make sense, politically. But then my suggestion is that we need to be conserved. That is where I was going before. Austere. Yes, we need to be austere. We need to ensure that our expenditure is prudent enough. We need to ensure that we don't spend unnecessarily, A bit more specific. Well, I can tell you that, okay, fine. We are in COVID, right? This fiscal gap that we are talking about is between your expenditure and then your revenue generation. But anytime we're talking about, closing the gap, we think about raising what? Increasing revenue. We shouldn't look at it that way. You can keep your, expenditure down. In a way, you are still closing the gap. So effectively, there are two, buttons you need to press, And so if you think, right, your revenue generation is a problem, for which it has been a problem, I don't know whether it's because the target we are setting is not realistic. I don't know whether because the investment that we've made to enhance revenue generation is not yielding or not. I believe it's not yielding. And that is why we always, think about enhancing our revenue. But then in the end, we have to, touch on our expenditure.
It is a few months to the end of the year and possibly the end of this government's term. We know that businesses are facing challenges, right? What do you think should be a startup's strategy, growing to the end, especially considering that we don't even know what's the following year, the next year brings. If you are advising generally on finance, and your advice is going to a startup, a new business, what would you advise a few months to the end of the year?
Well, we cannot take out the impact of COVID. We cannot take out the election, cycle that we normally have, and we cannot take out Christmas as well, If you put all this into perspective, I would say that, yes, as a business, this is a time that you need to be a bit conserved. You don't have to be aggressive going all out in your spending as a business. You don't have to be walking straight to the bank to, tap into money for, another business. And as a startup, it's difficult to even come by funds. It's difficult to even come by funds. But the little that you have, I believe that you need to protect it. And everybody or any investor who is engaging in a startup business is an aggressive, investor, because, the risk is very high. You might not even germinate to see the sun. Exactly, especially in the COVID era. So I would say that, yes, you need to be conserved in nature. Conserving nature means that your inputs to the business, which includes financing, and then the scale that you want to do the business, you have to, be a bit, I would say reduce it. Don't go all out, Let me put it that way. Don't go all out.
So there you have it. It's been a very fruitful discussion with Dr. Lord Mensah. We've learned, for instance, that if you're a startup, if you're a business, you need to conserve. And to government, the World Bank caution is worth taking into consideration because it has direct implication on the citizen. Don't wait till an election year to roll out a lot of development projects or infrastructural projects. Start from somewhere, start each year. Thank you for joining us on BizTech. We will come your way again next week. Until then, bye.
Jefferson continues the series on some internet tools that can be of help in our everyday lives on TechBits.
Hello there, my name is Jefferson Senior from After Music. This week on TechBits, we're going to continue with our useful tools around the internet. And I want us to continue our thread of emailing. And this week, I want us to find out about how we can easily clean up our mailbox. And the first attempt is actually getting rid of spam and getting rid of unwanted subscription. Well, there's a tool called Unroll. This tool will help you unsubscribe to unlimited amount of subscriptions, all for free. You know, sometimes when you're going through your email and you realize you're receiving a lot of spam mail, not even spam, but let's just put spam aside, but a lot of mails that you don't even remember subscribing to. Well, this tool will help you find all your subscription packages and help you unsubscribe from them instantly with one click. Let's get to it. Okay, so we're back on our browser and the website address is unroll.me. I'll just type it out again. That's unroll.me. Now you can just Google it, unroll me, and it will be the first thing that will pop up. Once you arrive, this is your first screen that you arrive on. Clean up your inbox. Instantly see all the list of subscription emails. Unsubscribe easily from whatever you don't want. And it's very straightforward to just get started. Just click on Get Started Now. And you can sign up with your Google Mail, your Yahoo, your Outlook, or most people don't have AOL in this part of the world, but Google is the easiest. So let's sign up with that. We accept our privacy policy. Make sure you read them. And you just sign in with Google. So in this case, we just go there, sign up with Google. Our password is there. And it does its magic during the sign up. So welcome to unroll.me. We are currently looking for email subscription in your inbox. While we look at that, let's get familiarized with the services. So let's go. So it shows us just little things, unsubscribe buttons, roll up. So whilst you're reading all this is actually working in the background, going through your mail. And once it's done, that's the final screen, and start editing. The first screen, as soon as you sign up, it actually goes through your inbox and it mails all your subscriptions. And once it's set up there, you'll be able to see the websites that you have actually signed up for. So this email address is signed up to mopping.design, Patreon, or so you can just go there, add to roll up, keep in inbox, or unsubscribe, and it's off. You have totally unsubscribed from that service. It's very, very easy. This is a great tool to clean up your inbox and have all your subscriptions at one place, and a very, very effective tool to keep your personal email clean and even your business email clean. So this is a great thing that I would advise everyone to adopt. So that's it for this week. See you again next time. Bye for now.
Ghana's inflation has further dropped to 10.4% in September, and 110 million yet to be paid to owners of failed savings and loans companies. We bring you these and more in Biz Headlines. For the second time, Ghana has recorded a drop in inflation rate since the country recorded its first case of COVID-19 in March this year. The year-on-year inflation rate for September, which is 10.4%, represents a 0.1% drop from the 10.5% recorded in August this year. This essentially means that in the month of September 2020, the general price level in Ghana was 10.4% higher than prices in September 2019. Meanwhile, the month-on-month inflation between August 2020 and September 2020 was a negative of 0.2%. The government statistician, Professor Samuel Kobna-Inim, explained that these figures were greatly affected by the inflation rate of food prices, which contributed almost 50% to the annual inflation. Let's do some central bank story now because the Bank of Ghana has been honored at the 7th Central Banking Awards. The governor of the BOG, Dr. Ernest Addison, received the Central Bank of the Year award on behalf of the bank. The organizers of the award ceremony, Central Banking, were joined by representatives of the winners of the Central Banking Awards 2020 to celebrate achievements during a virtual awards presentation published Tuesday, October 13, 2020. The annual Central Banking Awards, now in their 7th year, recognizes excellence in the central banking community. Still with the central bank, the Bank of Ghana held an estimated 20.9 billion cedis of the country's total domestic debt at the end of June this year. That's according to its second quarter bulletin. The central bank holding in domestic debt represents 17.2% of the total debt. Banks, on the other hand, held 37.8 billion cedis, which represent 31% of the total domestic debt. SNIT and insurance companies held a little over 612 million and 678 million respectively. Other holders made up of rural banks, firms and institutions and individuals held 37 billion cedis. Non-resident investors held 24.7 billion at the end of the period under review. Also, at the end of the fourth quarter of 2019, the Bank of Ghana held 15% of comparative holdings, whilst deposit money banks held 29.5%, SNIT 0.3%, and insurance companies 0.6%. Other holders and non-resident investors held 29.8 and 25.0 respectively. The Bank of Ghana has revealed that a huge part of the claims by depositors of the failed savings and loans companies have been paid, leaving only parts belonging to owners of these institutions. Second Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, L.C. Awazi, said on Tuesday, October 13, 2020, at a media sensitization program that only 110 million cedis out of the total claims of 6.5 billion is left to be paid. She explained that these third parties included shareholders and directors of the defunct institutions who themselves were very much involved in the management and control of these institutions.
Out of the 6.5 billion cedis in deposit claims validated by the receiver of the failed SDIs, an amount of 6.39 billion has been paid in cash so far to these depositors, leaving a balance of 110 million cedis being claims of related parties of the failed institutions. And these were the shareholders, directors, and affiliates of the defunct institutions who themselves were very involved in the management and control of these institutions. So they have to wait at the end of the queue. If any assets are realized, they would be paid.
Now, away from the central bank, pensioners can heave a sigh of relief because President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has assured public sector workers that the government will resolve the issue of past credits for public sector workers who retired from January 2020. According to the president, government will pay the difference in the lump sum payment through SNIT between beneficiaries of PNDC Law 247 and those of Act 766 for those retiring this year. The president made this known on Tuesday, 13th October 2020, when he commissioned the refurbished Hall of Trade Unions of the Trade Union Congress in Accra.
To assure the public sector labor organizations of our good intentions, government through SNIT would pay the difference in the lump sum payments between beneficiaries of PNDC Law 247 and those of Act 766 2020 with effect from 1st January 2020 to 31st December 2020.
So that's it for this week's edition of BizTech right here on GhanaWeb TV. You can get more news on www.ghanaweb.com. On Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram, we are The GhanaWeb. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ghana Web TV. My name is Desmond Frimpong. Have a pleasant weekend.